Hi there, and welcome to the Daily Gardener, and thank you for listening. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling. It's November 15th. Today we celebrate the first grapes that were grown down under, and the poet who saved a tree that looks like it came straight out of a fairy tale. We'll learn about the painter who was supposed to paint pineapples but never did, and the florist who did the flowers for Queen Elizabeth's coronation. We'll hear some thoughts on autumn from a Swiss philosopher and poet. And we grow that garden library with a riveting biography of a floral artist extraordinaire and the founder of the Cordon Bleu Cooking School. I'll talk about how you can repurpose a big, bulky item taking up space in your kitchen cupboard. And then we'll wrap things up with the Florida state flower. Think citrus. But first, let's catch up on a few recent events. The Houston Chronicle shared a post last week about Bob Randall. Bob has written 12 editions of his book. It's called the Bob Randall Book, or the Urban Harvest Book. Anyway, it's self-published and it overflows with charts and lists and all kinds of great advice. And in the article that was shared by the Chronicle, Bob gave 5 pieces of advice for how to cope with Houston's hotter temperatures. First, grow your own food, even if it's just a single pot of lettuce on a balcony. Second, if you're a longtime gardener, accept that the time-honored planting dates you used 10 years ago may no longer work for specific crops. Third, to cope with both flooding and droughts, add a pond or rain garden to your yard. 4, remember that Houston's summer is hard on both plants and people. So when you're doing your planning, plan to do minimal outdoor work in your garden during the hottest months. And then finally, plant what grows well in Houston in the warming subtropics, even if it means trying something new, whether that's citrus or blackberries, long beans, perennial cucumbers, or persimmons. And another post that caught my eye was from Fine Gardening. It was from their podcast, which just reached episode 50. And in honor of their 50th episode, they share their top 50 plants. And I love looking through favorite plant lists for new ideas. Anyway, Danielle and Steve came up with a great list. They split the 50. They each picked 25. And when I shared this post in the Facebook group, I said, get out your notebooks because you're going to want to take notes. Anyway, if you're in the Facebook group and you want to quickly track down that post, just type in 50, the number 50, and then you can listen to that podcast and get some ideas about plants for your 2020 garden. Finally, the Illinois Extension Office shared a great post about some plant picks that provide many seasons of interest. They said not only do these plants offer beautiful flower displays and foliage, but they have a remarkable presentation of fruits called drupes. Their picks were the Brandywine Possumhaw viburnum, the beautyberry, which really is gorgeous, and the white fringe tree. So there you go, Bob Randall's brand new gardening book for Houston gardeners, episode 50 of the Fine Gardening podcast, and then ornamental berries for your garden. If you'd like to check out these curated articles for yourself, you're in luck because I share all of it with the listener community in the free Facebook group, the Daily Gardener Community. So there's no need to take notes or track down links. The next time you're on Facebook, just search for Daily Gardener Community and request to join. I'd love to meet you in the group. Here's today's brevities. On this day in 1791, Australia's first thriving grapevine was planted. The Australian wine industry began with the arrival of the first fleet into Sydney Cove. In 1788, Captain Arthur Phillip of the First Fleet brought grape cuttings from South America and South Africa. Phillip planted a small vineyard at Farm Cove, the site of the present Sydney Botanical Gardens. In the beginning, the settlement in New South Wales experienced great difficulty. Supplies were limited, so cultivating crops for food was the top priority. The soil in and around Sydney was poor, and the convicts lacked horticultural experience, so starvation was a very real issue during those early days. Not surprisingly, Phillip's vines did not bear, but they were able to be transplanted to a new location, a 3-acre vineyard at Parramatta. By this time, Arthur Phillip had become the first governor of New South Wales. Phillip's grapes were crimson grapes, which require warm, deep, and fertile soil. Fortunately, many regions in Australia are perfect for growing crimson grapes, like the areas in Victoria, New South Wales, and southeastern Queensland. Australian crimson grapes are harvested from November to May. And today is the birthday of the poet, Dodgers baseball fan, and founding member of the Friends of Prospect Park, Marianne Moore, who was born on this day in 1885. Moore was an eccentric intellectual who had a range of interests outside of poetry. In 1967, when she was 80 years old, Moore created a citizen group called the Friends of Prospect Park. Moore formed the group to protect endangered trees, especially one tree in the park in particular, the Camperdown elm. Camperdown elms have a fascinating history that dates back to 1840. That year, on the estate of the first Earl of Camperdown, the estate forester and landscaper named David Taylor made a discovery. After planting much of the forest on the estate, one day Taylor noticed a contorted young elm growing parallel to the ground. What Taylor was looking at was essentially a weeping mutation of the Scotch elm. Like other weepers, the tree lacked the gene for negative geotropism, so the tree couldn't distinguish which way was up. Taylor dug up the young elm and brought it to the gardens of Camperdown House. Eventually, Taylor grafted cuttings of the weeping elm to wych elms, and the result was a tree that became known as the Camperdown elm, a weeping cultivar of the Scotch elm. Victorian gardeners loved Camperdown elms with their contortions and branches that grow out from the trunk quite parallel to the ground. In 1872, the New York florist Adolphus Goby Burgess gifted a Camperdown elm to the Brooklyn Parks Commission. The Burgess family had immigrated from England 20 years earlier in 1852. They were highly regarded in the world of horticulture, and their specialty was dahlias. Adolphus, no doubt, acquired the tree thanks to his English connections. After receiving the tree from Burgess, it was Frederick Law Olmsted who decided on the location for it. He decided to install it near the boathouse at Prospect Park. Since the graft was relatively low on the rootstock, Olmsted wisely planted the tree on a small hill, allowing plenty of room for the weeping branches. By the time the Pulitzer-winning poet Mary Ann Moore fell in love with the Camperdown elm at Prospect Park, it was in sad shape. Some of the limbs were hollow thanks to rats and carpenter ants, and the weak areas of the tree made it vulnerable, and it began to succumb to a bacterial infection as well as general rot. Mary Ann used her fame and her wit to save the Camperdown elm. She wrote a poem about the tree, which was published in The New Yorker in September of 1967. The public read her poem, and the Bartlett Tree Company saved the tree. It still stands today. Now, before I read the poem, I'm going to offer a few definitions to help you understand what she's saying. The first term is Thanatopsis. Thanatopsis is the name of a poem that was written by William Cullen Bryant. It's also a Greek word that means thinking about death. Bryant's poem is a consolation to us because eventually we will all die. And Thomas Cole and Asher Durand were both landscape painters. One of Asher Durand's most famous paintings is called Kindred Spirits. The painting shows two men standing on a rock ledge and shaded by the branches of an enormous elm tree in the Catskill Mountains. The men depicted were the painter Thomas Cole and his dear friend, the poet William Cullen Bryant. And finally, a curio is something novel, rare, or bizarre. Here's The Camperdown Elm by Mary Ann Moore. I think in connection with this weeping elm of kindred spirits at the edge of a rock ledge overlooking a stream. Thanatopsis invoking tree-loving Bryant, conversing with Thomas Cole in Asher Durand's painting of them under the filigree of an elm overhead. No doubt they had seen other trees, lindens, maples and sycamores, oaks, and the Paris street tree, the horse chestnut. But imagine their rapture had they come on the Camperdown elm's massiveness and the intricate pattern of its branches, arching high, curving low, in its mist of fine twigs. The Bartlett tree cavity specialist saw it and thrust his arm the whole length of the hollowness of its torso, and there were 6 small cavities also. Props are needed, and tree food. It is still leafing, still there. Mortal, though. We must save it. It is our crowning curio. Today is the birthday of the country's most loved female painter, Georgia O'Keeffe, who was born on this day in 1887. During her incredible career as a painter, O'Keeffe created over 900 works of art. She's remembered for her iconic paintings of skulls and flowers. In 1938, when O'Keeffe's career was stalling, she was approached by an advertising agency about creating 2 paintings for the Hawaiian Pineapple Company, now the Dole Food Company, to use in their advertising. O'Keeffe was 51 years old when she took the 9 weeks, all-expense-paid trip to Hawaii, and she never did paint a pineapple. And gardeners will be amazed by this fact: of all the paintings that O'Keeffe created in Hawaii, exactly none were native to the island. Instead, O'Keeffe was drawn to tropicals that hailed from South America: bougainvillea, plumeria, calliandra, and the white bird of paradise. And it was Georgia O'Keeffe who said all of these quotes. Nobody sees a flower, really. It is so small, it takes time, and we haven't time. And to see takes time, like to have a friend takes time. And I decided that if I could paint a flower in a huge scale, you could not ignore its beauty. And I hate flowers. I paint them because they're cheaper than models and they don't move. And finally, the days you work are the best days. And it was on this day in 1929 that Constance Spry, who went by Connie, unveiled her first floral shop window display. And she shocked London by using hedgerow flowers. Connie was a trailblazer. In the 1920s, she began creating flower arrangements for dinner parties. Her work made her an immediate hit with the socialites of her time. Her success led her to go into business, and she opened a flower shop as well as a flower arranging school. Connie designed the flowers for the coronation of the Queen in 1953. And during World War II, Connie gave lectures encouraging people to grow their own food. And I thought you'd get a kick out of this June 20th, 1945 article on Connie from the Corsicana Daily Sun out of Texas. Constance Spry, the English woman who not only arranges and sells flowers, but also grows them, carried on all through the Blitz. On one occasion, a bomb struck her house. It trembled, the roof sagged, but the building held, and Constance went right on working. At the corner of Berkeley Square, the most elegant district of London, lives Constance Spry with her flowers. She introduced London to a new kind of flower shop. There is a bridal department, a department for boutonnieres and corsages, a department for fresh flowers, one for trimming on hats, and on day and evening dresses. In her greenhouse, Constance cultivates some rare and exotic beauties. They're used to decorate the homes and tables of clients, but they're also sent to recreation homes for soldiers, spreading joy to many. In Unearthed Words, here are some thoughts on autumn from Henry Frederick Emile, a Swiss philosopher and poet. Walked for a half an hour in the garden. A fine rain was falling, and the landscape was that of autumn. The sky was hung with various shades of gray, and mists hovered about the distant mountains, a melancholy nature. The leaves were falling on all sides, like the last illusions of youth, under the tears of irremediable grief. A brood of chattering birds were chasing each other through the shrubberies and playing games among the branches like a knot of hiding schoolboys. Every landscape is, as it were, a state of the soul, and whoever penetrates into both is astonished to find how much likeness there is in each detail. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book recommendation, The Surprising Life of Constance Spry by Sue Shepherd. I love, love, love the cover of this book. It shows Constance arranging flowers, ever the influential floral artist, and by the way, the founder of the Cordon Bleu cooking school. Anyway, the cover is pretty enough that you can have it sitting out beside a chair. So fun. And let me read from Sue's introduction. Constance possessed a rare combination of talents as a writer, innovator, gardener, and above all, as a floral artist. She was a gifted lecturer and at different periods in her life headed schools for the richest and for the poorest. At a time when most women's expectations were still limited, she believed in instilling in girls from all backgrounds the confidence and freedom to create beauty. The fact that Connie served high society never meant that she wished to be part of it, nor that she was impressed by the breeding and wealth of her clients. She was never a name dropper. Her friend, the writer and gardener Beverly Nichols, once described the art of flower arranging as pre-spry and post-spry. She was brilliant at improvisation and an enthusiastic user of new materials like plastics and sticky tape, and she invented the use of scrunched-up chicken wire to anchor soaring stems and branches that would seem to fly out of her arrangements without the benefit of gravity. And instead of the priceless crystal, silver, porcelain, or other heirlooms that she might be invited to use at her clients' homes, she preferred baking tins, meat plates, or junk finds to put her flowers in. Her genius for creating beauty out of the cheapest and simplest materials was legendary. What a story, a riveting biography. And just a heads up, you can get a used copy and support the show using the Amazon link in today's show notes for under $3. Here's today's garden chore. Repurpose old punch bowls. This is right up Constance Spry's alley. Right about now, you might be thinking about going through your cupboards and sideboards as you prepare for the holidays. Seldom used items like punch bowls end up in the donation pile. But you can repurpose your punch bowls and use them in your home conservatory, the spot where you keep all of your houseplants. If you have a larger pot that you're worried about ruining a table or your hardwood floor or carpet, a punch bowl serving as a drip tray just may be the perfect solution. Since most of my pots are terracotta, I just place the terracotta pot inside the punch bowl and voila. And it certainly is an excellent way to add a little water reserve for your plant. And if the punch bowl is clear glass, it won't add any visual disturbance to your design aesthetic. Another way to repurpose a punch bowl is to consider using it as an open-top terrarium. This time of year, you could create a little woodland scene complete with some fake snow. All right, now it's time for something sweet to revive the little botanic spark in your heart. On this day in 1909, the orange blossom was designated the state flower of Florida. The poet William Livingston Larned was so inspired that he wrote a poem called Florida's State Flower. And the last little bit goes like this. Whenever you see the spotless bud, you know 'tis Florida the fair, and wafted to you comes the scent of all the blissful regions there. The rose may have its followers, the violet its standard too, the fleur-de-lis and lily fair in tints of red and pink and blue. But just a scent on pleasure bent of orange sweet the nostrils greet, and from our dreams the castles rise of groves and meadows 'neath calm skies. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener, and remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. The Daily Gardener is produced weekdays in lovely Maple Grove, Minnesota. You can find complete show notes over at thedailygardener.org, and be sure to share the show with your garden friends. You can find The Daily Gardener on all your favorite social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest, and of course, Facebook. While you're over at Facebook, don't forget to join the Daily Gardener community. Just search for these 3 words, Daily Gardener Community. The group will pop right up, and then request to join. Finally, I want to thank my team at Podfly Productions, where my fabulous editor is Eric Begay. Have a great day in the garden, and we'll see you on Monday.